Only for your club.
I taught at a private school for 10 years, Catholic school for back in the 80s. Went under State University, St. John's, writing classes. And I had the great privilege of working for you from 1997 to 2010. I'm not going to go through my whole life story, but I'll just give you briefly. And stop me at 1 minute and put the stopwatch. First of all, you have a lot of energy. It's amazing. You really do. You should be proud of yourselves. It's Sunday afternoon. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, right? And here you are. So don't get discouraged by numbers for now. For now, this is who you have in a meeting, and that's it, right? And your energy and your ideas and your commitment to justice is what's going to carry the day here. I have some ideas that we can talk about later. I'd rather do a Q&A with you, but I want to give you a couple of horror stories, one of which is current with Michael Mulgrew. Actually, we can prove committed a crime, which I'm going to get into. But I grew up in a union house. My mother was a nurse. We tried to organize nurses. My father was a union organizer in Texaco and New Jersey. We had 6 kids. I had 47 jobs over the course of my life, including in construction in the post office and driving a cab. Working for Rupert Murdoch at the Village Voice, working for Rupert Murdoch at the Wall Street Journal, where all those jobs, I got more respect than I did for Michael Mulgrew as a professional. It's hard to imagine working in a supermarket, whatever. So I grew up in Staten Island. I've been involved in politics since I was 17, 18. I worked at City Hall for 4 years, at the City Council President's Office, Paul O'Dwyer, in the mid-70s, where I learned how to do investigative work on contracts, which helped me later as an investigative reporter. I had my own newspaper, got my own. Worked for the Voice, Newsday, the Times, the News as a freelancer, basically. Had a column with the New York Observer. Anyway, so I got hired in '97 at the UFT. I was 50. And they hired me to work with the retirees, doing a newsletter and public relations. Anyway, I spent the year there. I got promoted into the communications department. I got promoted 2 years later into the New York Teacher, 2000. My first article, interestingly enough, that I'm in Queens, and I would bet that nothing's changed. My first article was at Richmond Hill High School. Overcrowding. Okay? Does it change? Okay. 15 years later. I was all gung-ho that this was going to change things, right? I won a first place award from the International Labor Communications Association. Randy gave me a big thing. And I didn't care about the award. I wanted the school to get undercrowded. Do something. I wanted the Queens UFT, I wanted Rhoda Frazier to do something.
She did something.
Nothing happened at Richmond Hill, obviously. I wasn't surprised that that's the answer. And it was crazy. Okay. So I did a lot at the UFT. I was a reporter for the Teacher. I helped organize unions at the Gibbs School, the administrative law judges of New York City, the United Cerebral Palsy. I wrote speeches for Randy and Mulgrew. I met with community groups all over the city. I met with elected officials. And the New York Teacher was probably the best part of the job when Randy allowed me to do good stories. I loved doing it. I wanted to be in the schools every day. I don't have to tell you this. The good news about New York City is happening in the schools. Notwithstanding the incompetent and corrupt administrators that you have to deal with every day. But the educators with their kids and their parents in schools, that's the story that I love to write those stories. I like investigative stories too. But the educators are carrying the day here in every borough, right? So I wanted to be in the school every day. Most of my colleagues didn't want to get up at 5:30. They didn't want to go stay late. They didn't want to travel to Queens if they lived in Manhattan or the Bronx if they lived in Brooklyn. So I was like, I'll go. I really did. So Randy wouldn't let me in the schools every day. I couldn't figure it out. And then Mulgrew told me once, before he fired me, he said, are you kidding me? I'm not going to let you in the schools every day. Who needs you in the schools? Because you're going to come back here and give me bad news. I said, no. I'm going to give you the good news about the educators. And then I'm going to give you the bad news about the incompetent administrators. That, yeah, you're right, because I'm not putting you in the schools. Forget about it. Okay. That's why I wasn't in the schools. The other thing is that educators are paying my salary. So why not be next to them every day and see what their lives are about? Okay? So whenever I used to tell that school story in the schools, I would always ask them for a raise, but that didn't work. Okay. I just wanted to know, did he say that his wife drank a margarita before? You might want to turn that off.
Oh.
Before she does the lesson plans?
No, after the lesson
I
plans.
thought you said before.
No.
Okay. You're probably wondering what this book is about. I'm not reading this. I pulled it off my bookcase this morning. I was trying to find the thickest book I could find. This is 1,200 pages. It's Arthur Schlesinger, who won a Pulitzer Prize, A History of American Life. The reason I have this book here, I'm not reading it. Okay? It's a lot of Kindle. It's 1,200 pages, and most writers I know, and occasionally myself, have this neurotic symptom called writer's block, which I don't usually have, but I get it sometimes. And I thought, we've been talking about stories, that I'm writing a book about the UFT. My problem is not to fill that book. It's how to get it in readable condition at 300 pages, because I know no one's going to read 1,200 pages. So I'm picking all these horror stories. I kept very copious notes the whole time I was there. So I have a very good recall on top of that, things that happen. So let me say this. There are a lot of misconceptions about the UFT, not just among the members, but the press, especially in New York. Think of the UFT as this good union. It's the good union in town, especially when we had all that corruption back in the 80s and 90s when DC 37 was dismantled, people went to jail, they made deals with Rudy Giuliani, all that stuff. So the UFT has always been kind of immune from scandal in the press, even though there's a lot of scandals to cover, they don't cover. Same thing with Randy. When she was president, and now when she's the AFT, I saw something I posted on my website yesterday. She's complaining about African Americans being mistreated. Okay, fair enough. She filed a lawsuit about 10 years being discriminated against. Bloomberg called her up, threatened to out her, which was not even an issue. It's like, she said he threatened to out her. There was nothing to out. Everybody knew about Randy's personal life, and guess what? No one cared. No one cared. But she would always use this as an excuse. Bloomberg threatened, so what? So let him do it. Who cares? Right. She dropped the lawsuit. Okay. Majority of people in the rubber rooms at one point were African American men and women. The odds of that happening were infinitesimal. It couldn't happen. If you put them all in a hat and pulled the names out, it wouldn't happen. So clearly that was an issue. Didn't do anything about it. My favorite or least favorite, you can Google this name, Vinnie Grippo from Brooklyn, was a principal who fired about 25 women teachers over the age of 50. This is online. Vinnie Grippo was also the head of the lifeguards union. And he was the manager of lifeguards within the city of New York, so he negotiated with himself. And if you had a hearing, if you had a problem, if you were a lifeguard, you had to go to Vinnie Grippo. He was the guy who decided your case. Okay. They went to Randy to file a lawsuit. She wouldn't do it. They had to go get a private lawyer. Okay. And the last one is she filed an EEOC age discrimination case. When I wrote the story, she gave it to me. She gave me the complaint in her office and said, do your regular good job, which I did. And as soon as the story hit the papers, Jerry Goldman, Donna Manganiello, Rona Frazier, Patty Crispino, naming names of UFT people, all started complaining that these teachers should be fired. The principals were good people. They should be fired. This was coming from her own people. Okay? I later found out that Patty Crispino, who worked after school for us, had the most, no, she had all the after profession work after school. She wouldn't give me the list, the principal wouldn't give me the list, and she was working at 52 Broadway right down the hall from me on the 12th floor every day at SEER, and she was doing professional work. She was defending the principal of her school. So Randy dropped that hold, and she accused me of screwing it up. I didn't vet it properly. I said, wait a minute, you gave me the name. You said they were being discriminated against. I don't have to call the principal to ask, you're telling me. And I interviewed the teachers. Okay, anyway, that's background, so we'll get to the current. Michael Mulgrew, as of today, should be under indictment. He filed a fraudulent report with the Campaign Finance Board 2 years ago, writing a check for $370,000 to a phony corporation at 39 Broadway. controlled by a guy named Scott Levinson, a very close friend of Michael Mulgrew's, who has a company called Advance Group, which does hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work for the UFT during election time and does lobbying and so on. There's no such company at 39 Broadway.
Is there 39 Broadway?
So across the street from the UFT, right? There's an Advance Group, and then there was a mail drop for this phony company. This has been publicized, by the way, 2 years ago. If you go to the Campaign Finance Board online, section 3802 at the very end, any attempt to mislead this board is a crime. Really? So what happened to Mulgrew? This is your money, by the way. They always forget that at 52 Broadway. This is your money that he's taken out of your pocket, writing a phony check. It's like the mob, right? Laundering money to his friend. It was a dummy corporation, but it got cash. So here's the deal. The only person in that union, there are 3 people who can sign that check. It has to wind up on Mulgrew's desk. Charlie Baker, the chief accountant. Dave Hickey, who was involved in a scam at the PBA 15 years ago. He's the guy who likes to fire people within the union. Only those 3 people can sign that check. But he's blaming the political staff. Paul Egan, Bridget Ryan, Jason Goldman. It's their fault. They might have concocted it, I don't know. But they couldn't write that check. And you get a check on your desk, think about it, for $370,000. Don't you ask? Where's it going? Oh, a PRI company. Where's that? 39 Broadway. Oh, it's across the street. Isn't Scott Levinson across the street? It defies believability. Okay. He has not been indicted, so this group has to go to Cyrus Vance, Jr., who was supported by the UFT, and ask that he be indicted. Make sure you get the campaign finance, I just gave it to you. Make sure that you look up what the Campaign Finance Board did to review this, what recommendations they made, why no one's been prosecuted. When Ron Reale, the former president of the Transit PBA, went to jail for doing the same thing. Sheldon Leffler, a councilman from Queens, well respected for 20 years, went to jail for doing the same thing Mulgrew did. So people have been prosecuted for this. That's your number 1 agenda. Okay?
Why not the U.S. attorney? Why go through?
Well, I forgot that. Thank you very much. If the check was mailed, it's mail fraud. Thank you. But the U.S. attorney would have to find the federal, and that's the only one. I'm not a lawyer. That's the only thing I can think of. But probably because, again, I'm guessing, he was defrauding a city agency. Right? So I don't know if that's a federal crime. It might be. But, okay, that's a good point. The U.S. attorney. Yesterday's New York Times had a story about Robert Johnson, the Bronx DA. He's involved in a flim-flam where he is going to resign. He's been nominated for district attorney. He's going to withdraw his name and get appointed to a judgeship. Okay? And then the Bronx County Committee is going to appoint the new DA for the next 2 years. How's that? So the voters don't have to say. Now, Robert Johnson, the reason I'm bringing him up, think of yourself as a principal for a second. I know that's hard to do. Okay. Or assistant principal. Just think of yourself, okay. The police come to you and say, one of your teachers has threatened to assassinate you with a gang. They're coming to kill you. Okay. No, actually, it's the other way around. You call the cops. You have a letter from this teacher. Sorry. You have an unsigned letter. Somebody is threatening to assassinate you. No, in fact, I'm sorry, I take that back. It was signed. Phony signature. Racknell James, the teacher's name was. Okay. So, first thing you would do is ask that she be arrested under the Patriot Act because threatening to kill a public official is now a federal crime. 30 years in jail. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you ask for police protection. You ask that the passport be lifted. You ask that she be sent to jail without bail. None of which happened. Okay. And Mulgrew covered this whole, Leroy Barr, Ellie Engler, Mulgrew, Dave Hickey, they all covered this crime up. The crime was not Racknell James, who 2 years later had the case dismissed after 27 postponements by Robert Johnson, Michael Mulgrew, the UFT that didn't represent her, she had to go out and hire her own lawyer, who told me he knew the judge, don't worry about it. She lost her job because her visa expired. Okay? None of it happened. First they said, Mulgrew said they have her fingerprints. Okay. I called a friend of mine in the police department at 1PP and he said, we don't have any fingerprints. We don't have any proof she left a letter. We don't have any video. There's no case. It should have been dismissed. The real problem was Racknell had a beef with the assistant principal who she was renting her apartment to, and the assistant principal wasn't paying rent, so she took it to court. So they framed Racknell, but that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is she lost her job. She almost had to go back to Jamaica. Something happened in between where she got lucky and it didn't happen. Lucky. No help from the UFT. But I was prevented by Mulgrew and Leroy Barr from going to her trial. He turned me down for a vacation day. I have the email. Request denied. For a vacation day? We're always allowed to take a vacation day. Right? Didn't want me to cover the trial. Blige, you can Google her, Iris Blige, was later found out to be stealing money from the DOE, and she has not been arrested, but she's not in jail. Which, by the way, just a quick aside, when you hear these stories like Francesco's principles, you got to go to the DA. You have to go to the district attorney and say, why wasn't she prosecuted? If you steal a Snickers bar and you get arrested, you get prosecuted. Come on, we all know that. We all know that. But these educators who are found stealing, and they plead to stealing, don't go to jail. Why? Because they're protected. Sometimes by the UFT, sometimes by politicians, a lot of times by politicians, right? And sometimes within the DOE. And the district attorneys don't get any press over that. They get the press over the horror stories that the New York Post publishes every now and again. I mean, they're going to repeat them because they're so ridiculous, the stories about teachers misbehaving, right? So I'm serious about this. If you have a teacher that has pleaded to stealing, you've got to go to your local DA, even one of you, and say, why isn't she being prosecuted? Or write a letter. Why isn't she being prosecuted?
Teacher or principal?
Huh?
Principal.
Principal.
Oh, okay. I think you said
Wait,
teacher.
the Bronx?
No, I think you said teacher.
Oh, okay. You've got to ask Cyrus Vance at a press conference or first in a letter, whoever you want to do it, why isn't Michael Mulgrew being arrested and prosecuted for stealing, for misrepresenting himself at the campaign finance? That's what you got to do. You got to make it current. And by the way, the thing that Mulgrew fears the most, he's a bully, by the way, in case you don't know. He's a weak, immoral, corrupt bully. Doesn't care about you at all. I used to write his speeches for him. One day I sat in his office, there were 300 emails on. I said, Mike, you got to answer these. What do you do with these? He said, screw them, except he didn't say screw them. And he said, watch. Deleted, gone.
Oh my God.
2 weeks later, I'm sitting in his office, 190 emails, whatever. I said, Mike, you give your email out at every school. You don't answer them? I have no time. Gone. Okay. So he's a bully, and he's a weak man, and he's a corrupt man. Having said that, this is the interesting story when I got fired. I'm not going to talk about my firing. I want to talk to you. I want you to talk to me. We went to the same grammar school together, same high school together, years apart. His aunt lived across the street from me growing up. She was like this with my parents. I went to school with his cousin. His mother and my mother were like this. Okay. I used to write his speeches. He loved the work I did at the CTE schools. He was vice president. He used to drive me home 5 miles each way out of his way. Some late night school stuff or late night meetings with the board back to the 52 Broadway. So we had a very good relationship. Really. Seriously. Until I started pushing him the same way I would push Randy to do these stories about abused teachers, not just teachers, educators. Okay? He didn't want it. He wanted no part of it. Randy, you could shame into doing a good story. She was a lawyer, and she would be embarrassed that you would know the law, and you would say, hey, Randy, you know, being in the rubber room for 2 years without charges is kind of like unconstitutional. And so sometimes you'd get Randy, or it would benefit her sometimes if I did a good story, so she'd let me do stories. Mulgrew would never let me do a good story because he was so embedded in the corruption. Okay? I have a whole list. I'm going to give it to Francesco. I don't want to go into every one of them. are entitled to know what every check that the UFT writes from the Department of Labor. Not a summary, every check that the UFT writes. That'll give you much better than the LM2 reports, that are summaries of how they spend their money. Okay. Two things about Unity. It's a cult. There's no other definition for it. It's a cult. There are rewards, there are perks. If you get release time, you don't show up. You abuse teachers. I know at DR who slapped a teacher at a hearing. Nothing. Slapped the teacher, nothing happened. You get to go to the conventions. All kinds of perks if you're in Unity. You get promoted if you're incompetent. Charlie Turner's a perfect example. Incompetent, lazy, and a bully. But there are some good people in Unity. I used to say they're decent people, but now looking back 5 years later, they're not really decent in the end. Because in the end, they fold. When Unity says jump, they jump. They're good work. They're hard-working people. I won't mention any names because they'll get them in trouble. But they have a limit to what they're going to confront Mulgrew with.
Correct.
They're not going to go against Mulgrew within the Unity caucus. So they'll try to pretend that they're helping you, but they're really not. Well, some of them will push and help you if it's not a school that Mulgrew and his cronies are expecting some favors from. Okay? A lot of this has to do with patronage, getting your nitwit niece or your nitwit nephew a job who doesn't deserve to be in the schools, who bypass the system. You've met them. You all know them.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with the principals giving the chapter leader something, whatever it is. Maybe it's procession work that other people don't get. Maybe the procession work is not posted, which is, by the way, a violation of the contract, as you know. Okay. So Unity, at the end of the day, is with Mulgrew and Leroy and Ellie Engler and all the VPs and all the chapter, all the borough reps and the DRs. Any of them who are in Unity have to toe the line at the end of the day. They have to, or else they're distant. They're like, they're blackballed. So the fact that some of them worked hard, and I saw it for 13 years, believe me, I did. But when the teachers are up against it and they're really not getting justice, they back off. My favorite example, maybe it's changed in the last contract. The DOE has 60 days to file charges against you. Well, the UFT should file a grievance. We never filed a grievance, anybody in the rubber room, or anyone else who went beyond the 60 days. We never filed a grievance because Randy and Mulgrew would say, well, that doesn't make any sense. If we file a grievance, then they'll present charges. Yeah. Or they have to drop the case. So they kept people in the rubber room for years without having the 60-day clause enforced. They didn't care. You know what they used to say? They're getting paid. What are they worried about? Their lives are ruined. Their careers are ruined. Their reputations are ruined. Their photographs are in the newspaper. What do they care? Because they're getting paid. Right? One of them in Brooklyn was in the basement of a school that was, I called the fire department to come and inspect it. The fire department said it was unsafe to have 40 people in a 300-square-foot room. Think about a 300-square-foot room with 40 people. Nothing happened. Should have been closed down. It wasn't closed down. Okay. So Unity is that, and the UFT as an organization, I think, comes under the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Act. It's called RICO by the federal government. It was passed in the 70s and 80s to go after the mob very successfully. It's people conspiring to steal and to defraud. That's Mulgrew. That's Mulgrew and his staff. They have conspired to steal your money, abuse your rights, defend the DOE, defend whoever the mayor is. We're supposed to get 4% raises in 09 because Bloomberg, Randy promised to stay neutral in the mayor's race, which she did. You know what happened to those raises. I think you're going to get the last one in 2020, right? Yeah. Without interest, right? That was all about Randy running for the Senate. It was all about Randy went to David Paterson and asked to be appointed to the Senate and denied it to the New York Times. He later outed her and said, no, she did come to me and she asked me for an interview. Caroline Kennedy wanted it. They finally gave it to Jill Graham. Randy wanted to be the senator. Bloomberg had promised to raise millions of dollars to help her campaign. That's what that 09 deal was about. That Mulgrew sold to the schools, sold to the Unity Caucus. We have a secret deal with Bloomberg. We're going to get 8%. We're going to screw Bill Thompson, our friend. Okay. We screwed Bill Thompson. His mother was...
Yeah, sure. That'd be good.
And we didn't get it. really, I made a few notes when I was here. The age discrimination I covered, 60 days I covered. Randy marched to where I live when Eric Garner was slaughtered by the Pantaleos, the cop, murdered. She has a group called Jews for Justice. Sounds good, right? Never existed when she was president of the union. Never heard of it. We could have used Jews for justice. We could have used anybody for justice. UFT leaders for justice, right? So she's out there for Eric Garner. Please, give me a break. Doesn't care about Eric Garner. He's back anyway. I don't want to discuss that so much because we're dealing with something I want to suggest to you. You can reject it or not. I think between now and April, you have to confront the UFT leaders at every turn. We all know there's corruption in the DOE. Oh, by the way, you want to hear a really good corruption story? Google City Time. Bloomberg, $700 million. They went to jail. He hired them to do technology at the city. Mr. Businessman went to jail, ripped off the city. $700 million.
They didn't pay it back.
They didn't have it. So when you start hearing about all these outside contractors, you know there's a deal somewhere. You just know it in your gut, and it's true. Can you prove it? It'll take you time. But you don't want to get burned out. You don't want to get overtired. You don't want to work 24/7. You have families. You have nice days. He wants to have a margarita with his wife. He wants to play golf. But really, the danger here is getting burned out and doing it 24/7, and then you'll be useless to everybody. So you have to enjoy life, which you obviously are because you're here, right? But the current situation, the worst thing that Mulgrew is a bad news story, and being confronted at Teachers Union Day, I think it's at the Waldorf, maybe the Hilton, the first Sunday in November. 3,000 people, I don't know what they're charging for a ticket.
$50.
How much?
$50.
$50. I would get one to be inside and confront him inside. Don't put that on the tape because then he'll know about it. But anyway. Anytime there's a school visit, anytime there's a meet the president, I don't know if he still has those, and he used to have one in each borough.
Yeah.
Rotating. Okay. 52 Broadway, the executive board is, they hate when people come to the executive board because it's become a private club. Okay? And the meal he described is exactly what it is. It's a very lavish buffet. Once in a while they have wine. 6 o'clock at night. Think about that. Making decisions with some wine. It's easy to make decisions with the wine. You don't feel so guilty when you sell out. But they really hate you to go to the exec board. And if you're in the neighborhood, if you just happen, if you work in Manhattan, it is at 6 o'clock. So there is that gap between. Well, there is no gap because you're working till 6 o'clock anyway, right? Yeah. So go and speak. But as Francesco said, they didn't have that rule when I was there, only 2 times a year. Think about how crazy that is. They don't really want to hear from you, but they hate the fact that you're there handing out flyers, right? Just confronting them because now you're saying, hey, you're not doing your job. It's not a voice on the phone. It's not an email. You know, it's not their photograph in the New York teacher. Just now become a penny saver. Confront them. They hate it. They hate it. So I would do that, but you'll spend so much time, and you have very limited amount of time, which is 7 months, to go after the leadership of this corrupt union. I don't mean the membership is corrupt. I mean the leaders are corrupt. The membership is not corrupt. That's the sad part of the story. And I'm not saying to stop the DOE stuff at all. I'm not saying that, but as Francesco learned, there's a lot of stuff that people put on government computers. They forget it's a government computer. Ask Chris Christie's staff with Bridgegate. They sit there and they type and they forget. And they write stupid things on a computer that's going to be released. Not just because of a prosecution, but because it's under the FOIA laws. So believe me, I've seen it. I used to get people all the time. All the time I used to get people writing stupid things on a government computer. They forget. She hired her because Betsy was investigating Mona Frazier and her partner for time card fraud. It was an allegation. Betsy had a tip from somebody. She started doing FOIL requests to the DOE, which sent them to the UFT. Right? She copied Klein, Bloomberg, all the top administrators of DOE, so they all knew that Betsy was investigating Mona Frazier and her partner. The next thing you know, Adam Ross, another nepotism hire, incompetent lawyer at UFT, his uncle was Jeff Sala from Queens. Well, next thing you know, Adam Ross is writing to her, offering her a job. Really? 2 weeks after you were asking for records from the DOE about Rona Fraser, who was in bed with the principal of John Adams, she was in bed with the principal of Flushing High School, she was in horror show when it comes to men. Okay. But my point is...
It's the whole Queens unit.
Huh?
It's the whole Queens.
Well, we could go to the whole... I'm not going to name every school, but a lot of part of them, yeah, exactly. Rona got more of my stories killed, I think, than anybody else. But my point is, okay, Randy, in order to endorse a political candidate, one of the issues is how they feel about human rights. It wasn't gay marriage back then. Randy was never in favor of gay marriage until the polls changed. But it was human rights for gays and lesbians. It was part of our, still is part of our platform. Okay, so then you hired a homophobe. Figure that one out. So I'm going to stop. I have one more story to tell. Then I'd like to do a Q&A with you if you have time. If not, I want to tell you about how else Mel Group is so dishonest and creepy. Really creepy. So David Pachter, who you can Google. David Pachter was a 37-year teacher who was a multi-millionaire who didn't have to teach. He lived on Park Avenue. He used to get $100 grand for going around the world copying masters' paintings. You know, it wasn't fraud. It was like you wanted a copy, and he painted for you. Didn't need to teach. Great teacher. Gets an award from Rudy Giuliani, Teacher of the Year, 07. I think the video's online. Had a company that sells watches. So David gets Randy Vere in a meeting, and she sends Rick David to him. It had to be before 2010. So David sits down with me, and we're in my office one night, and he has tapes, he's got boxes, he's got thousands of documents. They sent him to medical, saying he was a crazy person. He hired one of the top doctors in the world, Dr. Goldwasser, who completely demolished the DOE case. Okay. But he's in the rubber room. So I said, David, one thing. I believe what you're telling me, and I believe anybody who sits at my desk and tells me a story, but some people haven't. Believe it or not, some haven't. Few and far between. I said, you have all this evidence against DOE, and it sounds very compelling, and I'm convinced. But if you tell me one lie, just one lie, I'm off the story. Okay, no problem, we shook hands. No problem. The first thing he told me was he was transferred out of a school for bringing to the principal's attention that the windows were being replaced every year. Really? Who like their windows replaced every year? It's laughable at this point, right? How about some plastic for the ceiling like that? Anyway, he goes to Condon's office. They don't do anything. Condon doesn't do any real investigation. He does investigations against teachers and sometimes really bad administrators.
Well, now they changed it.
Have they?
A few weeks ago, they said that they have to hire real lawyers to keep in his office.
There was OSI separate. That's
Different. OSI is different, right? Condon's a special. Okay, but he didn't go after the mob. He didn't go after the mob bus companies. So David says to me, I said, David, don't you understand what you're onto? This was a big case that maybe Rudy did it. I forget. The 5 families of New York got together and they ripped off the city DOE for about $500 million. Sometimes by doing the windows every year, sometimes by not doing them but billing the city anyway. So he was onto something. Now he's on the hit list. David Pachter. Next thing he knows, at the School of Art and Design, he walks into a classroom where black and Spanish kids are watching movies, no teachers in the room. He goes around the corner, down the hall, and he sees all the white kids with 2 teachers and a parent. What's that? 2 strikes, okay. He was relentless, that's all I'm going to say. He was totally relentless. He was right every step of the way. He had a great lawyer, I won't name his name because he'll get in trouble. Great, nice lawyer. Claude Hirsch is not a good lawyer. He's on the side of DOE, but there are some really good, nice lawyers who I've worked with. And David's lawyer was one of them. He taped his principal lying, and I went to his hearing. I had a fight with Randy to go to his hearing, 30-28. she admitted on tape that she was out to get him. He got written up for bringing plants to the school, for donating plants to the school. She wrote him up for crazy stuff, crazy stuff. He got acquitted at 30-28. He beat the rap, he retired. He sued the DOE. I don't know what happened to the lawsuit. Great guy, really. So one day, so Randy gives me the story, and she gave me like a month to work on it. And one day, Mogu comes in my office, locks, pushes the door behind me, doesn't lock it, closes the door. And this is the guy who's driving me home at night, right? He says, listen, you can't do the patent story. I can't? Why not? The principal just called me. She said that he exposed himself on a cell phone to a 14-year-old girl. I said, really? Get my phone? He says, who are you calling? I said, the police. Didn't you call the police yet? This happened a week before. He said, Michael, didn't you call the cops yet? You're a mandated reporter. What do you mean? He said, you're telling me that a guy committed a crime? Were the girl's parents called? No. Really? And now you know that her parents weren't called. But you're not a mandated reporter anymore because you're a VP of the UFT. Moved back and forth for about 10 minutes and laid it on so thick. I said, you know what? I'm calling the cops right now and have them arrested, if that happened. Oh, don't call the cops. You just told me the principal told you it happened. Well, I'm just telling you, she said it happened. Oh, okay, she said that. I got it. Well, you don't know what happened. You're just telling me she said it happened. Okay. But a couple of months before, they accused him of possessing pornography, which I proved that 150 teachers and students had access to the computer in the library, and somebody was downloading pornography, but they planned it on tape. So I went to Randy. I said, we have a problem. Mogu, her successor, she was planning to appoint him, just told me this. She says, yeah, he just called me. He doesn't want you to run the story. What should I do? What should you do? Let's get some evidence that this happened, and ask the principal and Mogu why the girl's parents weren't called and why the cops weren't called, and why David Packard's not in jail yet. Well, you know, I can't do that. We don't have any evidence. Right. Exactly. Right. Okay. So I think we should run the story. Yeah, but you know what? He's really upset. He's got a good relationship with Hilda, and the ATO, her name is. She says, what would you do if I killed the story? It was due the next day. Would you quit? I said, well, it's a hypothetical question right now, but if any of this stuff is true, I would write the story. If indeed, I don't think it happened. I think it's a lot of BS, but if the principal has proof and she called the cops and the girl's parents are filing a complaint and the girl testified, yeah, I wouldn't write the story. I'd tell David to go to hell. No, I don't mean that. Just based on what you know now. So we go back and forth for 10 minutes. I kept saying it's hypothetical, hypothetical, hypothetical. Because I know what you'd do if I didn't run the story. You'd go to the press, your friends in the press, and you'd say, I'm covering up for the school system, right? That's what you would do. So I'm not answering you, Randy. I'm going to give you the story tomorrow. It's going to the editors will look at it Monday. It's going in that Monday night. It's going to be printed and be out Tuesday. I'm writing the story. Do what you want to do. So she ran it. She ran it because she was afraid of bad press. She didn't care about David Packard anymore. But she also knew Mogu couldn't do anything. He could just blow off steam, yell at her, which he would never do, because she's a bully too. Two bullies. So she ran it because I shamed her into running it, and I didn't give her any leeway as to what I was going to do if she covered it up with a fake allegation. Of course, we all know the story was not true, it never happened. That's the kind of guy Mogu is, you know, trying to kill the story to help somebody. So my question always is, what did Mogu get out of this? And now we find out later, as you know, Francesco posted it, he got a great fake job for his sister Kathleen, who should have been fired, who lied to the DOE. Competing with educators for after-school work. That's what's in it for Michael Mogu. Maybe not at that particular school, but from Dennis Walcott and from Mike Bloomberg, his good friend, he got something for his family. That turned out to be a complete lie, and she should have been fired. There's a whole report that he posted online about from Condon, right?
Yeah.
Or OSI. A whole report about Kathleen Mogu, right? So I'm going to end with this because it's getting late. Think of every time you're upset with a UFT official, which I'm sure is every day, and you're shocked that they're not helping you, or you're shocked to find out, as Francesco did, that his emails, I think they were your emails, that were being sent to DOE. Howie Shaw used to send my emails to DOE when I was doing the rubber room stories in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and found a lot of corruption from private companies. He would send my emails to him to DOE. I was shocked. And then people started showing me the same thing that he talked about. I was shocked. So we got to get over the shock and understand that they are guilty until proven innocent. They have to prove to you what they did step by step. Before you go to a hearing, you should ask what their track record is. You should ask to see them.
You know, I would like to actually get Jim up here, then we could continue with Q&A, because he's going to have a lot of questions. Jim Callaghan, everyone.
How many went to arbitration? How many went to step 2 and 3 and 4? Okay. It's not shocking anymore that DOE people and UFT are in collusion. Nice lawyers, well, not all of them, are in collusion. Claude Hirsch is probably the worst, but they don't care about you. This is a racket for good jobs, better pay, less work. They don't have any respect for the members. They don't care about the members. Why is Michael Mulgrew's voice on my car radio about the guy can barely speak English. I mean, he's an English teacher who says, the mayor wants less teachers. No, it's fewer, Michael. You have a master's degree in English, right? But he's on there because he wants to talk, you know, these, thems, and those guys on the radio. But to hire a professional. It sounds ridiculous, this ad for $1 million, by the way. Okay, so I've talked enough. My last point is, if you were accused, if I were accused of having sex in a classroom with a teacher who I later put on the UFT payroll, and it's on the front page of the New York Post, as Michael Mulgrew has been accused, I thought it was a beautiful day in the morning when Mulgrew's picture was on the front page. He claims being falsely accused while everybody's in the rubber room, most of whom were falsely accused. And even if they did something stupid, they shouldn't have been there for 2 years. Okay. I love it. But you never sued them for libel. And his denial, if you go back and looked at it, which I did this morning, was so weak, so passive. And he has only to prove 2 things about the New York Post because he's a public official. He has to prove that they knew about it, that it was wrong in the beginning. They knew it was wrong in the beginning, which he told them before they ran the story it was wrong. He didn't have sex with that woman. We'll have to clip it, right? He didn't have sex in the class. He didn't have sex in the classroom with that woman after school, is what he said. Anyway. And that they printed it anyway with malicious intent to hurt Michael Mulgrew. He would have won $100 million. You would hope he would give it to the UFT, but he probably wouldn't. But he never sued for libel. Any of us who was smeared, I don't think he was smeared, but if you think he was smeared that way and you had access to 20 or so lawyers that you weren't paying for, you would sue the New York Post and make them prove their case. He didn't. It's not like uncommon for people to sue newspapers for printing completely false stories about him. And it all adds up. One of his friends, Jerry Goldman, who was the Staten Island borough rep, then got promoted. No, he wasn't the Staten Island borough rep. He was the Manhattan borough rep. I'm sorry. His secretary accused him of extorting sex from her to keep her job. Randy found out from the Hilton Hotel he was taking kickbacks from the Hilton because we have so many parties there. Free rooms, free food, free booze. Should have been indicted, should have been arrested. She allowed him to retire. The woman was going to go into the press. They settled with the woman, whose name I will not use. But this goes on so many times. It's constant. I don't know if Rona Frazier and her partner were defrauding the DOE. I don't know that. I didn't investigate it. All I know is that the happenstance of Randy and Adam Ross and Michael Mandel getting letters from DOE that Betsy sent, investigating Rona, and then the next thing you know, she's on the UFT payroll. It's at best a coincidence. Okay. So I'm just going to leave you with the thought that I really admire the work you did. I thank you again for having me on your payroll for 13 years. It was a great job for me. I did get fired for trying to start a union among the writers. We're in court right now. And the last part of that story is the 4 people who refused to join the union were called in a couple of years ago, all of whom were making over $100,000. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, giving you a sense of who they are. one woman who was there 15 years without a blemish on her record, one writer who was there 16 years without a blemish on his record, Randy's former press secretary, who was there 20 years without a blemish on his record, and then we had one other one who I'll mention to close, was pulled in to Mulgrew and they said, we're going to let you go unless you take a 6-month severance package. What? They didn't fight it. Age discrimination, racial discrimination. They didn't fight it. They took a 6-month severance package. All of them in their early 60s to late 60s, late 50s. They left. So my case, I had 2 cases, one for slander, one for age discrimination, that I want to appeal now. My case that I was being treated differently because of my age, and also because when I gave Mulgrew the letter in June of 2010, he said, "Oh, my dead body will never happen." Well, nothing happened until August when they decided to fire me. But the last issue of the New York Teacher in June of 2010, I had 5 articles, 2 on the front page. And by August, I was being reduced to an intern by going to a meeting to take notes while a 25-year-old was going to do the story. So I had a really good case, And they offered me a $500,000 package the day I was fired if I didn't go on Fox News the next day, which I did, twice. And my lawyer, I'm not bragging, I'm not saying that braggadocio, I'm just telling you how they work. Okay? They wanted a confidentiality agreement, so for the rest of my life I could never say anything about the UFT. That's what they want. Randy fired 5 consecutive black and female writers, 5 in a row that were hired by Randy and then fired because they were incompetent. Okay, one of them got a nice settlement. But what I'm getting at is, of course they didn't want the writers to have a union, because they had plans for the other, I didn't know this, they had plans for the other 4. They were going to be, I was going to be one of the ones that was offered them, right? But they got rid of me anyway. So, the last name I want to mention in this 5 group, the other person who got fired was a man named Ron Isaacs from Queens. If you ever see his name coming up, or Schulman, another phony from New Action. Mulgrew's very, he's not sharp, but there's some very diabolical people around. He's diabolical, but there are worse people around him. So Ron Isaac was a spy for Randy in ICE. If you don't know who ICE is, it was a previous opposition group. He was a chapter leader in Queens. She planted him in ICE to be her spy. He reported back in emails from work and from the school. Every single day he reported back what was happening in ICE. The next thing you know, she gets reelected. Ron's on the payroll. Worked with me for 7 years. He didn't do 1 hour of work for 7 years. He got a pension from the UFT. He got a DOE pension. He's getting a pension from JFK, where he's a customs inspector, where he breaks and does no work. But he then was a spy, not just for ICE. We found out later through my case, he was spying on us. So if you haven't heard his name coming to your meetings, he's retired now. Ron Isaac, he lives in Queens, and Schulman allegedly got let go by the UFT. It's probably a cover story. That's just my guess. So keep up the good work. I'm sorry I spoke too long. And I hope you have some fun. You want to go home? I'm going to the Greek festival tonight. I know what you're doing.
I'll go with you.
Do you write for anyone now?
I just had a piece Monday night on BuzzFeed about Hillary Clinton. She came to an event on Staten Island, Albanian Americans who were supporting her. But she's so secretive that she wouldn't let the press in. This is the time when you need a good story. People who are thankful to Bill and Hillary, especially to Bill for what he did in Kosovo to prevent the ethnic cleansing. Paying $2,700 a piece, $250 grand total. She wouldn't let the press into the event. That's what you need. You need this crap. You need that kind of press. Anyway, I've done freelancing for the Journal, Wall Street Journal, and right now I have a consulting business, so I'm working for another union out of Washington, where I travel around the country, putting out fires, privatization fires, basically, or where local unions are getting really abused by management. So, you know, when my lawyer said, "What do you want out of this lawsuit?" I want my good name back. And he said, "Oh, that's good." But if you look at the days after I was fired, there were so many comments from people. I hate the word crazy, but supporting me. And I figured out all the anonymous blogs that you see anywhere are coming from Mo, who you consider the best, blogging on Norm Scott's, hold on that note, hold on. Anytime you see an anonymous quote, it's not just Mo, it could be anybody in the building. Anybody who doesn't have the courage, honesty, whatever you want to call it, to sign her name or his name, you know it's coming from you. The rest of it, I have the building. You have a big fight on your hands, I know you're going to succeed, and you're going to topple this regime, and restore democracy to the schools, and give people more respect. You are respected by the parents, I know you are, maybe not all of them. The kids look up to you. And I just want to finish on testing for a second. I was a very poor test taker. I hated tests. I did school on I always wanted to be a writer. And Ted Kennedy, by the way, and George H.W. Bush started No Child Left Behind. It wasn't just me. Corporate America got involved, the media got involved, Fox News got involved, all the conservative insurance guys who now say they care about black kids who want to get them to a good charter school, but not a good neighborhood, not a good job, not a good house. Just put them in the charter school. But not my neighborhood. They can't live in Glencoe. None of them do. So they took over it, and they're all pushing this as a success. And the only way that they're defining success now is making fourth graders nervous and getting sick, and their parents going crazy over a test. Well, look, think of the names if you can. If you Google them, you can probably find 50 people who are alive. Mel Brooks, Brooklyn, Barbara Streisand. I'm just throwing two names. But what do you think Mel Brooks got on his test? Think about it, right? And funny story. I was at Thomas Jefferson many years ago, and the principal was showing me all the celebrities, and then he whispered to me, you know, Danny Kaye went to school, but he got kicked out for misbehavior. He got expelled. Danny Kaye, famous comedian, famous actor, got kicked out of Thomas Jefferson. He probably wouldn't have passed the test. I know Mel Brooks wouldn't have passed the test, right? Maybe somebody, maybe Barbara Streisand. Anyway, that's my take on testing. It's not any of you, and it's a disaster. The UFT's been pushing it. The elite's been pushing it. They don't know what to do next. They're hostile. I'm done. Go ahead. Scott.
Media.
Bought and paid for.
Really? I'm thinking
the
of
news.
the Brienza story and Mulber's sister and $40 million of contract work that apparently was steered by the DOE to her company while Mulber was right with the UFC. That was covered by Hayden, I think, the New York Post. One day.
You don't think call it a UFC?
And it was dropped, and no one takes pictures of it.
Right, they call it a one-day story because they're closely with the reporters. The reporters are always looking for an easy story to cover. Sometimes they have to cover a story like that, but they're not going to pursue it. They're not going to ask for all documents. They're not going to ask for internal UFC. They're not. They're lazy.
So is it a mindset or is it a conspiracy? Or is it a combination of both? I mean,
you're asking the wrong person because I think Jimmy Hoffa still has kids. Both. It's a mindset because the Daily News, perfect example. When I was a kid, their circulation, I was born in 1947. Their circulation when I was in high school was 2.2 million a day and 4 million on Sunday. It's now 440,000. They're losing money by the day. Most are losing money by the day because they don't connect to neighborhoods. The people who live in the city, especially the new people who moved into the city over the last 40 years. Right? They don't cover this change. The mindset, not a conspiracy as such, but it's, you know, Rupert Murdoch and Mort Zuckerman and Sulzberger from the Times, they're not interested in schools. They're not interested in the kids in the schools. You know, every time I saw a library closed, when a librarian retired and the library was closed, locked up, what are you saying to the kids? We don't care about kids. Kids get it. They know when they're 10, they got it. The library's closed. Nobody cares about it. So it's a mindset. How The UFT, they do a lot of advertising in the newspapers, on radio, on television. They establish relationships with reporters. They give them inside scoops that always make the UFT look good, of course. And most reporters nowadays, in print especially, and even electronic media, they're under the gun to produce short stories to get them in the paper, and nobody wants to do investigative reporting. Very few people. Willie Rathbone at the Times, Charlie Bagley at the Times, a couple of other people. this whole thing with the Port Authority with Chris Christie, the Port Authority's been out of control for 34 years. It took Bridgegate to finally focus on this. The answer to your question, I would say it's a little bit of both. My experience with those reporters basically is they want a quick story. I remember when I got fired, the Post, they went to Mulgrew house in Staten Island. It took them 3 hours to come out. You know why? It took them 3 hours to find his painter's outfit and a roller and a can of paint and a painter's hat to come to the front door to look like he's a working class guy who's painting his house instead of just mucking him up to the UFC and he said it had behavioral problems. So they prison because the UFC says it. They don't have to prove. Why would you send somebody with behavioral problems to a school for 13 years interacting with students, parents, politicians, principals? So it's a little bit of both. I would order more on the main thing is lack of interest. They're not connected. They don't live here. They're not connected to the neighborhood. You know, the city is gone white now, a lot more than when I was growing up. And there's a disdain for non-white people in the city. I know you all know that. I hope you all know that. That's part of it.
So how do you propose that we get our citizens out?
Social media and that's the main thing by far. You can't compete with free, daily newspapers, Associated Press, or television news. You don't have the resources, and you don't have the time, which is April, right? So I know social media works. You all know that it works. And every candidate is using it. Everybody's using it. Twitter and Facebook and everything, right? I think the main thing that we should do between now and April with social media, and as Francesco said, it doesn't matter if they do each other. Some people try to do that. Rosa Parks is one person. Okay? Think about that. If people said to Rosa Parks, hey, don't do that, there's nobody coming. That's my hero. So you think about, really, Rosa Parks? And then Dr. King was preaching at Montgomery Baptist Church, so then you had a movement, and then it led to, it didn't start with Rosa Parks, I'm not saying that, but the Southern Civil Rights Movement started with Rosa Parks. I think the main thing that they hate the most is confronting them at their place of work, at 52 Broadway and in the schools. If you could get one person or two or three at a school when he's there, or any of the officials are there, not just one, any of the VPs. You've got this big event coming up, you've got a month to plan for it, turn it off, Teachers Union Day, huge event. The press, every politician in town is there. And also, one more thing. I looked it up this morning. I remember writing about it. Christine Quinn, the Speaker of the Council, passed a whistleblower bill. She had teachers testifying. What happened to her?
No one's whistleblowing.
Oh, nobody's whistleblowing.
No, nobody is a whistleblower.
Huh?
They say that you're not a whistleblower.
We foiled SCI. SCI says 207 people have applied to whistleblower. 0 have been confirmed, proven.
The City Council has no say over this? Who defines it? SCI defines a whistleblower under that law? Okay, so the next question is, what's the UFC doing about
They
it?
don't care, because I've applied for it anytime.
Yeah.
So then we got to get to the next.
I've done everything, I've spoken to everybody.
Oh, she's done her work.
Not a whistleblower, apparently, even though I spoke up as sexual violations. That's why I was.
You have to find a very sharp lawyer, which I'm not. Maybe Norman Siegel. No, she's friends with the UFC. Somebody like Norman Siegel.
I have a good.
Somebody in the City Council, you can
I've
ask.
emailed all of them already about, what is it?
No, it's got to be in personal contact with someone you know, with somebody in your family, somebody who knows a council member. Or meet with the council speaker, ask for a meeting with her, and find out. I don't know the law. I just remember writing about it. I remember there were 20 teachers I wrote about in Rita Cologne.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Maybe 2 more questions.
All of them?
Oh.
Everybody was turned down?
Yep.
100%. I was turned. I'll put the question.
I know, I believe so.
I want to get back to the check that Mulgrew wrote. What happened to the check?
It went to Scott Levinson, his buddy, at Advanced Groups.
Well, was it cashed?
Yes, Scott Levinson got it. But it was laundered through SCI. I think that's the name of the company. Google it. It was laundered through this other company with a mail drop at 37 Broadway.
Okay, but if it's
37 or 39?
39, sorry. Right across.
so there was no company, there was no bank account in that company's name?
Money went to Advanced Group. There was no company. There was no corporation.
No, I understand, but you're saying the check was made out to...
Whatever the name of the corporation.
Right, so it had to go to a bank account in that name. Who else?
Unless he's got a joint bank. Unless he's got a joint
That's what I'm
bank
saying. I
account
want
with
to
his name
know
on it.
who was on that bank account.
That's what campaign finance, they investigated it. I don't know what they did.
I don't know.
on the rug.
What is the story? How did Mulgrew become the president? You were there.
He wants to know how Mulgrew became president, how he was
And
chosen.
Michelle Bowden, who was more qualified, who was an African-American woman. And also, Randy wanted someone to fail and look like the screw up that he is, so she would look better. And there was nobody really in competition. And Unity folded, as they always do. They, Mulgrew. You know, he was a hail fellow, well, maybe have a beer with him and have a hot dog with him. But I think that she didn't want to promote Michelle, who I like very much, very confident, outstanding UFT leader. Listen, I know people used to ask me about Ed Koch. You think he's a racist? And I wrote about him so many times. I saw him treat people, especially African Americans, horribly. I can't answer the question. I don't know in his heart what racist he is or not. But if you commit a racist act, it doesn't matter whether or not you're a racist. Was Pantaleo a racist for killing Eric Garner? It doesn't matter. He killed him. It doesn't matter. So I think Randy has a problem with black men and women who are powerful, yes. But I really think she wanted Mulgrew because he's such a screw-up and he's so incompetent that she wanted to look like she was... Let me tell you, I'll tell you why I believe that. Within 6 months, people who despised Randy on the staff, despised her, were saying, oh, I wish Randy would come back. So, that's part of the answer. Yes, no, I had no qualifications.
I remember that more than her not wanting the woman. I remember her wanting Mulgrew more because he was somewhat incompetent, since we're on tape, than not wanting the woman. I remember her, like, she really pursued him, and, you know, she just promised it to him, and that was it. There was no other situation. He was the shoe.
Exactly. There was
That's what I remember.
But in terms of competence and leadership,
right.
Michelle was by far more qualified.
Right.
I worked with Michelle a lot. I worked with Mulgrew a lot. There's no comparison.
Jim, maybe
Whatever you want.
yeah. Oh.
I'm calling on the BQE for 3 hours. Talking about the perception of the UFT news union media, I was just thinking that we need things like, you know, for example, we talked about the murder of Eric Garner, and you can never hear any criticism of the NYPD unions for, you know, people like cops that have murdered people still having a job and not getting any, you know, consequences whatsoever. You're constantly seeing editorials and, you know, the photos and daily news attacking, saying, oh, yeah, all the unions do is protect bad teachers, and all they do is cover up for, you know, teacher misbehavior. So I wonder if you could be specific about what...
They don't accuse them of corruption.
Yeah, so you're talking about just the leadership of the union.
The news is supposed to on this campaign about the rubber rooms, it's a little BS story. But they won't accuse Mulgrew of corruption. They won't accuse the union. They can find a contract with the grant with software company, goes to check out, they never showed up to work, and they disappeared. So is that corrupt? And I prove it, I'm not talking.
So you're saying they will accuse them?
No, they will not accuse the UFC of corruption.
But they will accuse the other city unions of corruption?
Well, only because, no.
Okay.
Unless a prosecutor, well, let me clarify. Usually, if a prosecutor goes after another union, yes, they will cover it. Because it goes into their editorial policy. That unions are corrupt and incompetent leaders.
Yeah.
They will not really investigate a union like the UFC because they believe that it's an honest union. They might believe they're protecting bad teachers, like, you know, in general, you know. They might believe that they're wrong on charter schools because their friends are running charter schools. You know, it's different than saying they're corrupt. And corruption doesn't mean they're taking money necessarily. The corruption that you all know about, which is why you're here, is their complete subservience. That's not even subservience. Their partnership is a better word with the DOE. That's the word. Their partnership with the DOE. They're hand in glove. Members cannot separate the two, and you don't really have a union. So they're not going to recognize. And also, they think, listen, you know this, teachers score very high in polling when they're asked about professions. Very high. Educators, not just educators, score very high. But not with the news. They just don't. My favorite story about education and salary was after Sandy Hook. I was at a party in Connecticut, and people were complaining about teachers getting paid too much and having some work too much. And I said, wait a minute, I got a question. What's your kid's life like? What do you mean?
applied for it. Everything I had. Okay. So the night before Sandy Hook, I called you and said, you know, we got word that somebody threatened to come in and take 20 kids tomorrow, 4 teachers. But, you know, we could probably get your kid out of it, but I need $1 million. Yeah, I'll give $1 million. But you won't give the extra money to the teachers who died. Their first reaction was to protect the kids. They're dead now. They're dead now. But their colleagues, you argue over how much more money they should make when they just showed you that it's not about testing. Mm-hmm. They ran to the kids. Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. That's a good point. I closed it with saying, he said, public employees make more money than people in the private sector. That's the way it is.